What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mick Thinks Tiny. My name is Mick. So there's one state on the West Coast I haven't talked about yet, but it could be the perfect place for you depending on what you're looking for, and that's Washington. So today I'm going to talk about tiny house communities in the state of Washington. This is a great video for those of you who are looking to go tiny and you're interested in the West Coast, but you don't necessarily want to live in California or Oregon. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and let's jump into it. Let's talk about tiny house communities in Washington. Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm talking about tiny house communities in the state of Washington. Now, Washington is a really cool state. For those of you who are familiar with the Pacific Northwest, there's a lot of benefits to being in that area, particularly for tiny homes. When we're talking about cost of living, that is not one of the benefits for the state of Washington. It actually has a much higher cost of living than I thought. So when I looked this information up, I was surprised. So it's actually $95,000 in terms of median family income, which is almost $20K over median family income for the United States as a whole. So it's not cheap. Obviously, you've got Seattle there, you've got, the Space Needle. Those of you who are Grey's Anatomy fans, that might be what you think of when you think of Washington and Seattle. There are 3 national parks in Washington, though, so that's really great for those of you who are looking to be outdoors, if you're interested in hiking. Depending on the part of the state that you're in, if you're on the western side of Washington, it has a much milder climate. So you're probably gonna be able to go outside, go for a hike, ride your bike almost all year round, which is pretty amazing. If you're on the eastern part of the state, it's gonna be a little bit warmer. So you have to decide in terms of where you're looking at and make sure you pay attention to the climate because all the different parts of the state vary quite greatly in terms of the climate. The really cool thing about the state of Washington is that there's no personal income tax. So for those of you who are looking to save money in that regard, that could be a benefit for you. And if you live close to the Washington-Oregon border, then you can always go across the river to Oregon because there's no sales tax there. So some perks there. When we're looking at tiny house laws, they don't differ too much compared to other places, so still 400 square feet or less. We're looking at King County, which is the county that Seattle is in. That's where you're gonna have to put your tiny house on foundation. You're gonna have to go through the Department of Labor and Industries and their approval process, so make sure you check out their website as well too. And if you have a tiny house on wheels, that's gonna be considered an RV, so that's not going to be considered a permanent all year round full-time dwelling option. So again, always make sure you check the area that you want to be in, building codes, standards, all of those things can vary. And also just in general for the state of Washington, it's very ADU forward. So that's something to consider as well too. So ADUs might be a better option for you depending on where you want to be in Washington. I've said this before, but I really do believe that tiny house communities can offer you a lot of affordability options. Depending on where you're located, you could save money in terms of your monthly all-in cost. There's a lot of amenities as more and more pop up. They're really starting to favor the resort style. Location matters for all of you, for everyone that I've talked to, all of the comments that I see. It really matters where the community is situated relative to access to the grocery stores, maybe to a major airport, that sort of thing. The security features are really important to a lot of you. So depending on the community you choose, there might be more features compared to others in terms of like the gated, so some of those like lock and leaves, and then ultimately flexibility because you don't have to do it forever. This is something I can't stress enough because it is really important to see it as a journey that you're on. So I don't want you all to think that like if you go tiny, it has to be for the rest of your life. It could just be something that you do for a few years to save money or just because you want to try it out. It could just be an adventure. So when we're looking at the sort of tiny house climate in Washington, if you will, there's quite a few things that I think are in tiny homes' favor when it comes to the state of Washington. So there are quite a few builders. So West Coast Homes is one of them. This is what their website looks like. There's other builders in the area, including Omark Design, which I had on the channel over a year ago now. And then there are quite a few tiny house villages that are focused more on transitional housing and supporting people who are experiencing homelessness, like New Horizons Communities. They have at least 3 villages in the state of Washington, one that is exclusively for veterans. So that's worth checking out if you're interested in that. If you know someone that's experiencing homelessness, it might be, and they're in the area, it might be worth having them reach out to them, or if you have any veterans that are looking for a tiny house village. So New Horizon Communities is definitely worth checking out. When we look at the state as a whole, it does have a lot of RV resorts, like RV parks. It has a lot of campgrounds, so similar to like Pennsylvania and Massachusetts. But I did find 2 tiny house communities, or at least closer to what you consider a traditional tiny house community, like those of you who watch the channel. So first up is Seabreeze Community. So this is what their website looks like. So Seabreeze community is located in Port Townsend, Washington. It's actually off of Port Townsend Bay, which it looks like a really beautiful community with like waterfront access. It's about 45 minutes from a Walmart, but there's a QFC in town, which is like a regional grocery store in the area. So you're not going to worry about you're not going to have to drive an hour just to get your groceries, but you would have to drive 45 minutes if you wanted to specifically go to a Walmart. Now, it's an RV park, but they more recently have created sections for tiny homes. It looks more like their park models. There's tiny homes for sale and there's lot rent. So in terms of tiny homes for sale, the one featured here, like in the image you see here, that one's about $78,000. That's a park model. So you would buy that home and then you would have to rent the lot. Now, the lot rent is expensive. I'm just going to preface that. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They're charging anywhere from $850 to $1,050 a month. It includes water, sewer, electric, and internet. There is an income and a credit score requirement. You have to make 4 times what the lot rent is, and you have to have a credit score of $700. They do help you try to find down payment assistance, which I think is a plus. I haven't seen any communities where they're like upfront about like, hey, if you can't afford the down payment, we're going to help you figure that out. And they are pet friendly. So again, I know this is one of the more expensive ones that I've ever mentioned, but I wanted to make sure that I talk about what's available in the state so that you're not surprised when you go to look it up yourself. Next up is Wildwood Lakefront Cottages. So this is what their website looks like. Wildwood Lakefront Cottages is located in Sedro-Woolley, Washington. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's about 20 minutes from a Walmart, 90 minutes from Seattle, and it's on Lake Whatcom. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly either, but it's an invite-only community. That's really interesting. I have never heard of that before. So basically what happens with this community is that there's 90 cottages. They're all owned by individuals who were the original owners of those cottages. There are some that come up for resale. I will show you one. I'll talk about one in a minute. And then there's also renters, but you can't rent on this cottage community without being invited to rent it from an original owner. So that's kind of where the invite-only exclusivity piece comes in, but it has everything you could ever imagine when it comes to amenities: tennis courts, kayaking, there's, boat docks, there's gyms, there's tons of like green space and opportunities for hiking and things like that. So it looks like a really beautiful community, but it's exclusive. So that's sort of the caveat there. When it comes to what the price point looks like for the resale, I found one on Zillow for $420,000. So this is one of the cottages, what it looks like. It shows you where it's located. Looks like it's located sort of at like the middle of the community, but closer towards the main road. It's a 2-bedroom, it's 1 bath, it's 399 square feet. So $420 is expensive. I'm not going to pretend like paying that much per square foot isn't a lot. I think more than anything, it speaks to where we're headed in this industry in terms of the investment side of things, because you could buy this for $420,000. You could live in it if you want, but I'm guessing you're going to have better options it's going to be better for you if you were to buy it and then rent it out, especially since it's invite only and it's exclusive. But yeah, that's Wildwood Lakefront Cottages, and they've been around for a while too. So the other option I was thinking about was land, and buying land and then just maybe figuring out how to put a structure on it yourself, or buying a land that already has a structure on it and putting an ADU in the backyard. So again, it's more sort of like getting creative when you don't have you don't have as many traditional tiny house community options, and you have more restrictions on tiny houses on wheels versus on permanent foundation. But I did find some land for sale. So there's land for sale in Sprague, Washington. This is more on the eastern side of the state, closer to Spokane. So that's something you have to consider because the climate's going to be different there. But you can get 2 acres for $20,000. The other option is you could buy land that's closer to the Oregon-Washington border. So this is in Centerville, Washington, which is about 2 hours east of Portland, Oregon, and you're looking at about $25,000 for a little over 1/10 of an acre. So when we're thinking about the options that you have in Washington, at least the ones that I've talked about, you have your traditional buy the home, rent the land, or you can buy the home and own the land. So that is the benefit of Wildwood. You would own the land, or you could go the ADU, DIY, and land buying route. So your options in Washington, at least based on what I've been able to find through my research, are Seabreeze, which is an RV park that has the tiny house park models option. Wildwood, which is technically a traditional tiny house community, but then they've made it exclusive and invite only, so that changes things a little bit. And then you can, or you can go the land route and you can buy your own land and then maybe put an ADU on it or DIY something. But ultimately, it depends on what you all think. So I'm curious to know if you would consider any of the options that I presented if you've looked at Washington or you're interested in that particular area. If there's other communities that I missed, for sure drop them in the comments. If you haven't seen my other videos on tiny house communities in California and Oregon, you can check those out here. And don't forget to think tiny. I'll see you guys in the next one.